pretty much how we live our lives as royals. I must say, though, that I know it may not sound that way with how I just described it, but I do have to say we are a very happy family, even if we hold grudges, in our heads against others in our family sometimes. We act very happy and lovable against others. My mom has had something depressing her every now and then, and she loses it on me and my brothers, but other than that, she is one of the most lovable people I know. She still tries to be as much of a devoted wife, and a mother as much as possible, but the truth of the matter is that we need to stand up for ourselves sometimes. My mother does have some crazy traits about her in general that I think are crazy, but I can live with them. I don't think it makes her less of a person, but she is crazy, and an example of that is how often she cuddles someone. But there is something I find to be crazier, and she said she has been this way ever since she and my dad got engaged, and my dad has said this too, and I think this is crazy, but I don't feel comfortable saying that to something my mom thinks is crazy, and she causes no harm by thinking this way. If somebody sees my mother, they will never see her with pants on. They will always see her with a skirt on. The reason why is because my mom loves being beautiful for my dad, and she said that by wearing a skirt, she feels more beautiful that way. She doesn't dress like a slut or anything. In fact, since we live in the windy city, if it is windy, cold, or precipitating, what she wears usually covers her legs entirely. She would only wear something that would go above her kneecaps if it was a hot day with no wind. However, with all that said, there are also some ways about how she looks that I just think of as crazy, which are she refuses to wear pantyhose because she feels like she is wearing pants, and when we go swimming, despite how she dresses in public already, she would only wear a one-piece swimsuit and never a bikini because she feels that bikinis are too slutty for exposing her tummy. She also, despite wanting to look beautiful, she feels that hair dye and nail polish and other forms of makeup, she feels that hair dye and nail polish and other forms of makeup are okay, but she would never put anything on her face because she feels that the chemicals are bad for you and are teratogens. When it comes to how her purple cloak is at work, she can get away with it because if they ask her to take it off, that's religious discrimination, so the hospital she works at can't do anything about it. However, when it comes to her general personality, which her depression is not all a part of in my eyes, because her depression is not something she always had, she actually acts like a wound-up kid most of the time. And so does my dad, but to an even greater extent. When she is around my dad, despite my mom being 7 years older than my dad, when they are around each other, age difference becomes totally irrelevant. They hug and cuddle each other, as I have previously said before, and act like SpongeBob and Patrick, as they do as best friends, but to a smaller extent, because they are actually married and are so in love. They even act like kids when we are not around. Sometimes I think their mentality didn't age at all, but their IQs and their physical mind matured. Well, I can't say that is true, because my dad's autism symptoms did mature, but my mom's kind of dematured after George was born. When it comes to how my parents look in general casual time, despite being a king and queen, they look like casual parents. My dad dresses however he wants, except in his royal costume, and there is even no dress code for where he goes to work. My dad is also a very handsome person too. He has short black hair, and his face always looks very clean-shaven with a voice that actually sounds a little bit like Winnie the Pooh. My mom generally dresses in a more fancy way when she goes to work. Because doctors are required to dress more fancy under the right jacket no matter where they work. Other than that, and when she is dressed as a queen, she dresses however she wants with a skirt. I I do have to say this about my mother. She loves being beautiful, and she has achieved that goal very well, probably even too well. She has very long black hair that no matter how she wears it, it looks very stunning, and I have to be honest, with how cuddly she is, though I haven't cuddled with her in years, the only thing that makes her more beautiful, along with her being extremely beautiful already, and mostly calm voice, is that she is just so sweet. Moving along, me and my brothers don't look like triplets because of our large age differences, but if we were close in age-wise, we would look like triplets. I personally have the hair of my dad with my mom's face, except my mom wears contacts except in bed. I always wear glasses. Well, my dad has no vision issues, and neither do my brothers. The main difference between how me and Sam look is that my brother Sam and my dad's eyes, nose, ears, and mouth with his head are shaped like my mom's. It is hard to describe George other than, in a way, he is easy to remember, which is why he looks like a young George Harrison. I personally can tell my siblings apart easily, even if we are not dressed in our favorite colors. However, you probably couldn't tell us apart if we weren't dressed for our favorite colored cloaks in public. When we have visitors in Robbinsog, we dress as royals, so our neckties tell us apart right away. When our family comes here and we are dressed as royals, we always remind them of the color code, and we are remembered by our family that way when they look at our neckties. Meanwhile, back to what I said about our personalities, my dad and mom are basically the same person except for their job and my mom's depression and mobility issues. I personally am a lot more mature than them. I also am a lot more strict and angry than they are. While my parents' biggest interest is in each other and their family and topics involving what they do for a living, I am a little bit different than them. I have one passionate interest that they don't have, and that is my main goal is to try and find a cure for autism. The thing is, my parents don't know that, and I do research on my laptop every day and conduct experiments in my bedroom and study experiments done by other scientists to figure out the cure for autism. Sam is very supportive of me in my studies, and George knows he has autism but doesn't quite understand it. That is why, if I need to do an experiment, Sam is always the one who's my guinea pig. However, back to my personality. I am like how most strict discipline forces are. You are nice to me, I will be nice to you, and vice versa. I really do consider myself a strict person. I mean, I do smile a lot, but if somebody makes me angry, I am angry. Sam is pretty much the same as I am, which is why I and him get along so well, other than Sam has an interest I don't have, and Sam has and that has never been able to appeal to me, but we can agree to disagree over it, and that is roads. He never likes it when we fly anywhere because he's a little afraid of flying, because he loves studying roads and navigating, so he would rather drive. Then there is George, who is definitely the oddball of the three of us. George's main interest in ceiling fans, which is why that every year he picks out a new ceiling fan for a room in our condo. He saves boxes of them in our room's closet. At first there were none, and now there were 3, and they are good quality. However, back on track, we share no interests in George. We wish we did, but ceiling fans is pretty much the only interest, and every time we try to do something in a ceiling fan related activity with George, we always end up kind of bored. George is a personality. He is probably more naive than we are, but he is not as much of a kid as our parents. He can get hyper, but all he does is that he wants to play. My parents are hyper when they play. Also, my brother George isn't as sensitive to sugar as my parents are. If my parents consume sugar, they get hyper to beyond anyone, including themselves, can control, and they just let loose their energy so fast someone always gets hurt. The last time my parents had sugar, it was some bedtime 2 years ago, and I could tell my parents were in an extremely romantic mood. So when it was bedtime, George didn't want to go to bed. So my mom carried him and just dropped him on his bed and then turned down the light and shut the door. Our ceiling fan wasn't on yet, and George always wants to sleep with the ceiling fan on. So I needed to turn on the light to find the remote to turn the fan on. I did this without being told to, and I knew I did this without being told to. I knew that George would want me to turn it on, but when I saw him, there was blood all over his bed coming from his head because we thought he hit the bed, he hit the floor. I told Sam to go out to the restroom and to wear cloth so we could stop the bleeding. I specifically wanted to leave my parents alone so we wouldn't interrupt what they were doing. And if we did interrupt them, they would be furious at us and probably wouldn't have clothes on. Plus, we all probably would want to see them dressed the way they were. It wasn't until now when George realized how much pain he was in, and then he began crying, but he wasn't screaming for some reason. Sam began applying pressure to George's head wound to calm the bleeding, and George shriveled for a bit from the sting of the water in the wound, but he was still cooperating with us very well. We explained to our parents the next morning about how they were at fault, and they vowed to never eat sugar again. My mom examined George's head wound and made sure nothing was broken, and the incident was over, and to this day, they couldn't forgive themselves. George had no score from it, but it would be because his hair had grown over where the wound was. Also, my brother George's issues impacted nothing to his autism. So he was doing okay mentally too. The blood stains were washed out from everything it affected, so we had no reminders of that incident other than our memories. However, back to the original topic of our personalities, all I can say is that, as different as we were personality-wise, other than George, we all had similar traits to someone else. However, we all had a similar trait of sweetness because we are all sweet to someone else, including George, who I am not as close to. George was very nice to me, and Sam, even if we have nothing in common. And we like that. And our parents are the world's greatest nurturers. My parents have some flaws, which may include the occasional once-in-a-lifetime ass kick, but God, we love them so much for how much time we spend with them.